Hey, it feels different, right?
Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Fantasy Sports. Today I'm beginning some NFL. Obviously last week I covered basketball, but this week I want to be getting back into NFL just because there's not so many weeks left. And obviously there's more time to talk about the NBA than there is about the NFL. But with that being said, I think I just want to hop straight in. Talking about Thursday night all the way to Monday night. Obviously there's some games in here that aren't as important as the others, but to start off with the Bears and Panthers game, the Bears looked very solid with the rookie quarterback ahead of Bryce Young, which I think was more or less a test to the coaching. I think at this point you got to question whether or not the Panthers needed to take a different route when it comes to the offseason, whether it be the personnel or whether it be the coaching. It just doesn't seem like Bryce Young's really fully fit in. And I don't think it's that he doesn't have weapons. I think at the end of the day, having DJ Chark, Adam Thielen, Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard, a worse offensive line, Hayden Hurst, that's pieces by all means, but he hasn't adjusted into defenses, and obviously with the way the defense has been playing, but still, I mean, being a first round or first overall pick, you expect to be able to put up more than 13 points in a game. So it's confusing to see, definitely, but I think one of the things that I want to focus on more about Bryce Young is just how many turnovers he has. He does not look comfortable in the pocket, and obviously, like I said, they have a bad offensive line, but with that being said, he can't be coddled his entire, career. He will have to make plays, and just like CJ Stroud, who I'm going to talk about in a second, he needs to step up, and if he wants to be the talent that everyone expects him to be. Another game that was really interesting was the Ravens-Brown game. Last time the Ravens played the Browns, they killed them. I do not believe they had Deshaun Watson in that game, but still, Deshaun, being injured in the first half and then coming out in the second half with an injured shoulder that is now going to miss the rest of the season for. Losing 33-31 after holding a pretty steady lead is pretty surprising for me just because of the way Lamar wound up playing. He threw 2 picks, one of them being a pick six, and he lost a fumble. I know Ronnie Staley went down. He hasn't played a full game in, pretty much an entire 2 years, but it's just impressive for the Browns to come out and win a game like this. But more or less, it's embarrassing for the Ravens to lose a game like this when they had a lead so high, and you just see them, take the ball away out of Keaton Mitchell's hands, and Lamar cannot sit in the pocket for as long as he has. I think that's one of the biggest things that he needs to work on. He's a scrambling quarterback who just can't manage to get out of the pocket fast enough, and it causes a lot of problems for the offense, because I get it, he's a passer, but he's also a rusher, and I feel like more or less he's been trying to prove how good of a passer he is, but at the same time, you have to prove how good of a quarterback you can be and make the right reads, and it's not making them sometimes. With all the MVP talk, I think it's bolstered by the fact that his team's been playing really well and he's been really efficient and clean, and he wasn't clean or efficient in this past Sunday. So it's definitely something to look out for just for the rest of the season, if he can really take the next step in making sure that he isn't just playing to win, and more or less playing to not playing to win, but playing to outdo the other team, not just to hold a lead. Packers-Steelers game, that was a really good game. We came out, we dominated with our offensive line, our first-round pick. The tackle looked really, really good with all the big runs we have with Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. We dominated the ground game. Kenny Pickett had a decent game, but he didn't have a great game. He had a pretty average game for Kenny Pickett, what you expect. But I was really excited out of what I saw from Najee and Jalen Warren. That offensive line looked really good in the run game, and with everything that had happened last year with Najee, he's had a good 4 games in a row, and I really like that. I really like what Mike Tomlin's doing with the 1-2 back. It just seems like more or less that's what teams are doing nowadays, and it's not a bad thing by any means to have 2 running backs who are efficient and good. You've seen that on plenty of teams. Obviously, it sucks when you're a big Najee fan. You want him to go out there and dominate, but I like it. So, I mean, Jalen Warren is like this hidden talent that no one expected to be as good as he is. So it's really extremely exciting. On the Packers side, Jordan Love kind of played a clean game. He threw a pick at the end of the game, but he couldn't make any big plays, and I feel like that's been a problem after the first 3 weeks where he started off really strong. When it comes to big plays, he hasn't taken as many deep shot throws, and he's looked very weak when it comes to over the middle. Obviously, with the play calling, it's different, but I don't know if it's him or if it's the play calling or if it's the team. It just doesn't look like he can really score right now, so it's confusing to say the least. For the 49ers-Jags game, 34-3, not much to talk about other than the fact that the Jaguars looked really bad. 49ers looked good. Brock Purdy came out and threw a really clean game. But for the Jaguars, it confuses me because Trevor Lawrence has not looked good at all this year. He's looked really bad compared to the last 2 seasons he's had, or at least the last season he had. And it questions whether or not he is taking that elite step that people thought he did last year. He got better weapons. The coach obviously is still there. It's not much has changed, so it's questioning whether or not he can just maintain, and it doesn't seem like he has. When you pretty much don't put a scoring drive together in the entire game and your one score comes off of a turnover inside the red zone, it looks pretty bad. So yeah, but the 49ers played really good, but the Jaguars played really bad, and it's worrisome for the future in the playoffs. Obviously, I think they'll wind up making the playoffs just with how bad that division is, but it's concerning for the playoffs. Saints-Vikings game, another Josh Dobbs, big week. The biggest takeaway for me in this game was how well Jameis Winston played after Derek Carr went out. I think for fantasy purposes, Jameis Winston is the better player for Chris Olave. The moment he came in, he threw a little 30-yard back corner throw that only Olave could go up and grab, and it was extremely impressive. And then he threw that terrible across the field pass that was caught for a touchdown. But he also made plays. Like, he came in and he threw 2 touchdowns, and Derek Carr hadn't been doing much, and he hasn't been doing much. I feel like Derek Carr maybe doesn't have connection, but also was frightened to take those deep ball shots after the injury that he suffered. So I really like Jameis Winston in terms of fantasy. I don't know if I like him as a winning quarterback, but I think one thing I've noticed is that he definitely is not afraid to throw it, and that's what I like about him. But again, Josh Dobbs had a great week, and the Vikings got another win. They're looking really good, especially with Dobbs under center. I mean, he did really good on the Cardinals. I'm surprised that they wound up trading him. So it's definitely interesting to see where that'll wind up going. I know Kevin O'Connell has been doing really good, making that offense strong for the past 2 years, so it's interesting. Texans-Bengals game, this was a huge game. The Texans came out and won away against the Bengals. And I think DeMeco Ryans is really a stud. I think he really has coached his team up well. I think he's gotten Stroud really comfortable with the wide receiver room. I think he's gotten really comfortable on the offense. There's a progression read or a video of CJ doing his progressions in real time. And it was really impressive to see. He made 6 different reads and wound up completing the pass for a touchdown, even though it didn't wind up counting. It just shows how elite he is at a young age, and it's really impressive to see. As for the Bengals, this was a big loss. It was kind of back and forth game, but you can't lose to the Texans. Although they are a very strong team on both offense and defense, it's extremely impressive to see the turnaround they've had. The Bengals are the better team. They're the more focused seasoned team, and you expect them to win at home with a quarterback in his 5th year who just signed a multi-million-dollar contract. And it seemed Burrow played a really great game. Don't get me wrong, but throwing 2 picks is again unclean and not something you should be doing when pretty much CJ has thrown 2 his entire career so far in the NFL. You expect a little better from someone like Joe Burrow. But with all that being said, it was a huge win for the Texans, and I know the Texans now have like a 65-67% chance to win or make the playoffs. So I could, obviously, like I said, the Jaguars obviously win that division, but the Texans could always give them a little flack. Lions-Chargers game, really good game. This was extremely interesting. Herbert threw 4 touchdowns, like 400 yards, and they still wound up losing at home. We had David Montgomery rush for 100 yards and a touchdown. Gibbs ran for 2 touchdowns and 100 total yards. Goff wound up throwing 2 touchdowns. It was a really good game. It was really exciting to watch. I actually got a lot of this game to watch on a lot of time to watch this game. But yeah, it was a really good game. Really back and forth. Not a lot of defense. But I think at this point the Chargers head coach is kind of it's questionable whether or not Brandon Staley should keep his job just with the way the defense has been playing and the way they continue to lose these big games. I'm not sure what their record is right now. They're 4-5, and I feel like they're way better than a 4-5 team. If anything, they're a 5-4 team or a 6-3 team, but they just haven't been able to piece it together. And I think that's probably the most frustrating thing as a Chargers fan. Not me, but just if I were to be a Chargers fan, or if I am a Chargers fan, watching this team go out there and Herbert give his all, and Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler on offense, and then continually watching the defense just allow them to lose the game. But definitely interesting take. And the Lions look like one of the better teams in the NFL right now with the top 3 offensive line. St. Brown, Gibbs, Montgomery, Jameson, Donovan Peoples-Jones. Goff is really solid. Just a really good offense and defense for them right now in a division that they have pretty much wrapped up. And then for the Falcons-Cardinals game, biggest story for this was Kyler Murray returning. He threw a clean game. He threw 1 pick. He had a touchdown, and he had some rushing yards. They came out and won against the Falcons at home. Kyler Murray looked like Kyler Murray, which was the biggest takeaway for me. He looked, mobile in the pocket. He was running. He didn't seem scared to make any throws. And for the first game back in pretty much over a year, or almost a little under a year, he looked really good. And obviously the Cardinals at this point, pretty bad team, but It's exciting to see what they could wind up maybe doing next year with that head coach and that offense. Maybe just fix up the defense a little, but definitely exciting to see. And as for the Falcons, confusing what happened with Desmond Ridder, and I just don't get what's going on with Bijan Robinson. He had a really strong game, but Arthur Smith just does not want to use Kyle Pitts, and when he uses Kyle Pitts, he doesn't use Bijan Robinson. So it's definitely frustrating from like a fan standpoint if you have these 2 first-round picks, top 5 overall, top 6 overall, and you're just not having them be used. It would definitely stress me out. But yeah, definitely interesting to watch. And again, another coach who wouldn't be shocked if he was on the move in the offseason. Giants-Cowboys game, like I said, I always have to talk about the Giants, but this was an ugly one. The Cowboys put up like 600 yards of offense. They had 7 touchdowns. Tony Pollard, again, even though they had 7 touchdowns, didn't get in the end zone, which is amazing. I think he had 15 carries for 75 yards. But yeah, I mean, Brandon Cooks went out there, put up a performance. Gallup got a touchdown. CD had a crazy game. Dak played a perfect game. And the Giants did put up 17, but again, it was a really ugly loss. So you can take it how you want as a Giants fan, but I think at this point, you know what the season's like. As for the Cowboys, you expected them to come out and dominate at home against a weaker team. Not at this level, but it shows that they could really get it when they get it going on offense. They really can get it going. So definitely interesting to see. And for that division, again, they came out and they dominated or played very well against the Eagles, who are the best team in the NFL right now. So it shows that they can dominate these smaller teams and be extremely competitive with the top teams. So it's something to watch again for the rest of the season. Jets-Raiders game. This was weird because the whole storyline has always been Zach Wilson, and then Zach Wilson went out there and did really good. So is it a defensive problem? Is it an offensive problem? I think it's more or less a red zone problem. They get a lot of possessions in the red zone. They kicked 4 field goals, obviously, and they had 6 possessions, and they can't finish when it comes to putting the ball in the end zone. So I think that's their biggest problem right now, red zone offense. The Raiders obviously snuck away with a win. I don't think there's much to talk about. The Raiders kind of, they're not a great team, but the Jets are a team that you expect to come out and win these games on prime time with a good head coach, a solid offense and defense. You expect them to come out and win these games. When they lose, it's kind of shocking, and you want to point fingers and question what's going on in the locker room and what's going on behind the scenes. So it's definitely something I would consider looking forward to or looking to when it comes to what Aaron Rodgers' return time is, what they're going to wind up doing with Nathaniel Hackett on the play calling, why they continue to start Zach Wilson. But for the foreseeable future, it just seems like the Jets are going to be that middle of the team. Not too good, not too bad. Can put up competitive games, but never win. So it's interesting, being from New York or being from New Jersey and seeing a bunch of Jets fans. And then the last game of the week was the Broncos-Bills game. Obviously, the Broncos wound up winning with 12 men on the field in the last field goal play. They got to kick the field goal again. The Bills lose another game. I'm pretty sure there was 4 turnovers by the Bills offense, 3 by Allen, 1 by James Cook. When you look at a game, you can't expect to turn the ball over 4 times, especially that's what was happening with the Vikings early on. When they were losing games, they were turning the ball over a lot. And now the Bills, ever since Dable left, it hasn't looked good for Allen. He's been really, really bad when it comes to turning the ball over and, keeping it clean. He has these big games by all means, but being 5-5 is not a good look for a team like the Bills. It questions a lot. I'm very confused. But for the Broncos is really impressive. They came out to beat the Chiefs. I forget who they beat after that, and then they wound up beating the Bills. That's 3 straight wins. They're 4-5 now. Obviously, they had 2 games that they should have won at the beginning of the season against the Raiders and some other team. But they also had 70 points put up on them at one point. So it's a really confusing team, the Broncos. But it seems like they've gotten it together, so I'm really excited for that. But with everything being said this week, it was definitely really interesting. There was a lot more stories this week than there has been in the past. If there's anything I missed, let me know. But I appreciate you guys watching as always, and tune in next week when I cover the 11th week of football. Thank you.